When I was a kid, I can remember trudging through waist-deep snow, digging caves into towering snowbanks, and ice skating down my driveway. Maybe it's just me, but it feels like the winters are getting milder. Over the last 125 years, the average temperature in Maine has increased by about 3 degrees. This is, at least in part, due to the coastal waters. The temperature of the Gulf of Maine is increasing faster than any other body of salt water on the planet. This time of year, if you want to find the snow, you need to head inland, and you need to head north. Maine is still the second snowiest state in the U.S. I expected the snowiest would be Alaska, but it's actually Vermont. At this point, I'm feeling a little silly, loading my snowmobile in the back of my truck with the expectation of actually being able to use it. Where I live, in central Maine, there is no snow, and the trails are done for. That's why I am packing everything up and going for a little drive. If you get on I-95, head north, and just keep going, the last stop before you cross over into Canada is Houlton. And that seems like a pretty good place to start this trip. Going north is kind of a theme for today, so that's the direction I'm headed in. To do it, I'm using the Southern Bangor and Aroostook railbed. This section of railway was originally built in 1895, and it's mind-boggling how long and straight some of these sections of trail are. The rail trail very closely follows Route 1 and passes through many of the small towns in the area. On this trip, there is no shortage of places to stop for rest, food, or fuel. You may have noticed a new piece of gear on my dashboard. That orange blob bouncing around your screen is a Garmin inReach Explorer Plus. This device allows me to send text messages via satellite instead of relying on the cellular network, and it has a slew of other features that can prevent a bad situation from becoming a really bad situation. I chose this particular model for a couple of reasons. The satellite network utilized by Garmin covers the entire globe with no dead spots. If you are on planet Earth and you can see the sky, the Garmin can get a message out. Garmin's also use the most powerful antenna, which is more likely to get a signal out if you are under tree cover. While the Explorer Plus does have maps, it is not meant to be your primary source of navigation. It does not have the ITS trail maps. I have it on my dash so that I don't have to take out my cell phone to get my bearings. It's an easy way to confirm that I'm headed in the right direction and identify landmarks like towns, roads, and bodies of water as I pass by. Now, there are other brands out there with fewer features. Some of these models may save you a lot of money up front, but the cheapest ones are only one-way communicators. You can send preset messages out, but you can't receive them. With a two-way communicator, the service that receives your SOS will immediately start sending you messages back, in an attempt to ascertain what kind of emergency you are facing. They will send you updates as far as when you can expect help, which greatly affects your next move if you're in a survival situation. They can even send you medical advice if you are injured. With one-way communication, you press the button and then hope that someone has received your message. You have no way of knowing whether help is really on the way. You're completely in the dark, and you're not the only one. First responders have no way of knowing what kind of emergency you are facing. They could very easily show up underprepared for what is actually going on. If you feel the need for a device like this, get one that gives you the best chance of survival. The features that you didn't think were worth the extra money may just be the thing that gets you out alive. This is potato country, and these are potato fields. In Aroostook County, there are roughly 60,000 acres dedicated to growing potatoes. The fields are massive, and they stretch on for miles. They make for some good riding. Out here, this isn't so much a snowmobile trail as it is a 2-lane highway made of snow. I'm taking navigation pretty seriously this trip, and I stop frequently to make sure I'm going the right way. There are a lot of intersections that aren't on my trail maps, and they aren't always clearly labeled. I'm not worried about getting lost. I can always backtrack, but I am trying to control my mileage and my time. I have a hotel room reserved for the night, which means I need to arrive at a specific destination at a somewhat specific time. I don't want to arrive too early and then be bored in a hotel wishing I had done more riding. But I also don't want to overdo it and be too tired and sore to enjoy the ride back tomorrow. I've got a lot of options, which will affect my mileage and my timing. So I stop frequently to check my progress and make decisions on which trail to take. This is Fort Fairfield, and it's not exactly a big city, but it is one of the more popular towns along my route. Around here, it's apparently no big deal to have a major ITS trail travel straight through the middle of your town. Riding a snowmobile down the sidewalk feels a little wrong. But my planned route takes me through Limestone, which means at some point I need to cross the Aroostook River. And this is one of the few places to do it. Maine is almost 90% forest, so when I say the fields out here are impressive, it's because I'm not used to seeing wide open areas. At this point, I've gone about 60 miles, and I'm getting pretty close to one of my major stops. Before I go any further, I want to get some lunch, take a little break, and then top off my tank. Now I'm at the Rendezvous restaurant, and I was able to score a pretty good lunch. The place is actually bigger than it may look like from the outside, which is good, because it was a pretty popular spot. After leaving the rendezvous, I fill up in the town of Limestone, and then it's back to the trails. I turn off of the ITS trails and head up to and around the Aroostook National Wildlife Refuge. This trail also follows a 15-mile loop around the outskirts of the now abandoned Loring Air Force Base. This was by far the best ride of the trip. The trails couldn't have been in better condition, and it was a blast to ride. This trail also connects you to the runway loop trail, which, as the name suggests, leads you on a cruise straight down Loring's runway. The base was built in the 1950s and was a key installation during the Cold War. Northern Maine was a perfect location for it, as there is no other place in the continental US that is closer to Europe. Loring was home to a refueling wing, B-36 bombers, and later on B-52 bombers as well. These were capable of carrying nuclear weapons to Europe and then on to the Soviet Union. When it was first built, Loring had some pretty impressive specs. It was one of the largest bases of its kind. At 2.3 miles, its runway was one of the longest, and its hangars were some of the largest ever built. It also had the highest capacity to store both fuel and weapons. The base was closed in 1994, and you might expect it to be a ghost town, but it isn't. There are plenty of abandoned buildings, but there are also almost 20 businesses in the area, employing nearly 1,300 people. When there's no snow, the runway can still be used and goes by the name of Loring International Airport. Add in the tourists, and this is a pretty busy spot. This is the runway loop trail, and if you keep going through the base, it will loop back around to the ITS trails. The trail reports issued early this morning warned that while the trails in this area had been groomed the night before, they might not stay open for much longer due to bare spots. I was lucky. The very next weekend, this section of trail was officially off limits. This spot should look a little familiar. I stopped here just before lunch, and this is where I complete my loop. My plan for today was to start in Houlton, go around and into the base, and then loop back down to Presque Isle, where my hotel is. From Loring, I have a couple of options, each one a little longer than the first. It is a little later in the day than I had expected. It's after 2 o'clock. So I decide to follow the most direct route, which runs about 30 miles. It winds through the town of Caribou and then follows the Aroostook River straight into Presque Isle. Snowmobiles don't exactly track well over hard surfaces. I end up bouncing off the sides of this bridge like a pinball. On the loop trail around Loring, it was like a dream, and the miles went by way too fast. Here, I've got about the same distance to go, but the trail is bone-breaking. It's rough, and my progress is slow. At least, there are some decent views along the way. As I'm wrapping up my last trip of the snowmobile season, I'm reminded of a question that I've been asked before. Which do I prefer, motorcycling or snowmobiling? It's a hard question, because I enjoy both for very different reasons. Luckily, I don't live in a hypothetical world. I can do them both, and there are even times where I can do them both in the same day.